Hey, live again. I have a chewing gum today in my mouth. Fuck it. Chapter 5. Of course, I've been meaning lately to go to resume him to ask for work. To ask him to get me lessons or something. Raskolnikov thought. But what help can he be to me now? Suppose he get me lessons. Suppose he shares his last far thing with me. If he has any far things, so that I could get some boots and make myself steady enough to give lessons. Hmm. Well, and what then? What shall I do with the few coppers I earn? That's not what I want now. It's really absurd for me to go to resume. The question why he was now going to resume him agitated him even more than he was himself aware. He kept uneasily seeking for some sinister significance in his apparently ordinary action. Could I have expected to set it all straight and to find a way out by means of resuming him alone? He asked himself in perplexity. He pondered and rubbed his forehead, and strange to say, after long musing, suddenly, as if it would spontaneously and by chance, a fantastic thought came into his head. To resume his, he said, all at once, calmly, as though he had reached a final determination. I shall go to resume hints, of course, but not now. I shall go to him on the next day after it, when it will be over and everything will begin fresh. And suddenly he realized what he was thinking. After it, he shouted, jumping up from the seat. But is it really going to happen? Is it possible it will really happen? It really will happen? He left the seat and went off almost at a run. He meant to turn back homewards, but the thought of going home suddenly filled him with intense loathing. In that hole, in that awful little cupboard of his, all this had a month passed been growing up in him, and he walked on at random. Okay, pause that. I'm gonna. No. Okay. His nervous shudder had passed into a fever that made him feel shivering. In spite of the heat, he felt cold. With a kind of effort, he began almost unconsciously, from some inner craving, to stare at all the objects before him, as though looking for something to distract his attention. But he did not succeed, and kept dropping every moment into brooding. When, with a start, he lifted his head again and looked around, he forgot at once what he had just been thinking about and even where he was going. In this way, he walked right across Vasilevsky Ostrov, came out onto the lesser Neva, crossed the bridge, and turned towards the islands. The greenness and freshness were at first restful to his weary eyes after the dust of the town and the huge houses that hemmed him in and weighed upon him. Here there were no taverns, no stifling closeness, no stench, but soon these new pleasant sensations passed into morbid irritability. Sometimes he stood still before a brightly painted summer villa, standing among green foliage. He gazed through the fence. He saw in the distance smartly dressed women on the verandas and balconies, and children running in the gardens. The flowers especially caught his attention. He gazed at them longer than anything. He was met, too, by luxurious carriages and by men and women on horseback. He watched them with curious eyes and forgot about them before they had vanished from his sight. Once he stood still and counted his money, he found that he had 30 kopecks, 20 to the policeman, 30 to Nastasia for the letter, 3 to Nastasia for the letter. So I must have given 47 or 50 to the Marmoleos yesterday, he thought, reckoning it up for some unknown reason. But he soon forgot with what object he had taken the money out of his pocket. He recalled it on passing an eating house or tavern, and felt that he was hungry. Going into tavern, he drank a glass of vodka and ate a pie of some sort. He finished eating it as he walked away. It was a long while since he had taken vodka, and it had effect upon him at once. Though he only drank a wineglassful, his legs felt suddenly heavy, and a great drowsiness came upon him. He turned homewards, but reaching Petrovsky Ostrov, he stopped completely exhausted, turned off the road into the bushes, sank down upon the grasses, and instantly fell asleep. In a morbid condition of the brain, dreams often have a singular actuality, vividness, and extraordinary semblance of reality. At times, monstrous images are created, but the settling and the whole picture are so truth-like and filled with details so delicate, so unexpectedly, but so artistically consistent that the dreamer were he an artist like Pushkin or Turgenev even could never have invented them in the waking state. Such sick dreams always remain long in the memory and make a powerful impression on the overwrought or deranged nervous system. Raskolnikov had a fearful dream. He dreamt he was back in his childhood in the little town of his birth. He was a child about 7 years old, walking into the country with his father on the evening of a holiday. It was a grey and heavy day. The country was exactly as he remembered it. Indeed, he recalled it far more vividly in his dream than he had done in memory. The little town stood on a level flat as bare as the hand, not even a willow near it. Only in the far distance a corpse lay, a dark blur on the very edge of the horizon. A few paces beyond the last market garden stood a tavern, a big tavern, which had always aroused in him a feeling of aversion, even of fear, when he walked by it with his father. There was always a crowd there, always shouting, laughter and abuse, hideous horse singing, and often fighting. Drunken and horrible looking figures were hanging about the tavern. He used to cling close to his father, trembling all over when he met them. Near the tavern, the road became a dusty track. the dust of which was always black. It was a winding road, and about 100 paces further on, it turned to the right to the graveyard. In the middle of the graveyard stood a stone church with a green cupola, where he used to go to mass 2 or 3 times a year with his father and mother. Mother, when a service was held in memory of his grandmother, who had long been dead and whom he had never seen, on these occasions they used to take on a white dish tied up in a table, napkin, and a special sort of rice pudding with raisins stuck in it in the shape of a crust. Okay, first we change this fucking table chair. Good enough. Okay, good enough. Good enough. He loved that church, the old-fashioned, unadorned icons, and the old priest with the shaking hat. Near his grandmother's grave, which was marked by a stone, was the little grave of his younger brother who had died at 6 months old. He did not remember him at all, but he had been told about his little brother, and whenever he visited the graveyard, he used religiously and reverently to cross himself and to bow down and kiss the little grave. And now he dreamed that he was walking with his father past the tavern on the way to the graveyard. He was holding his father's hand and looking at the thread at the tavern. A peculiar circumstance attracted his attention. There seemed to be some kind of festivity going on. There were crowds of gaily dressed townspeople, peasant women, their husbands, and riffraff of all sorts, all singing and all more or less drunk. Near the entrance of the tavern stood a cart, but a strange cart. It was one of those big carts, usually drawn by heavy cart horses and laden with casks of wine or other heavy goods. He always liked looking at those great cart horses, with their long manes, thick legs, and slow, even pace. It's nothing as though it were easier going with a load than without it. But now, strange to say, in the shafts of such a car, he saw a thin little sorrel beast, one of those peasant nags which he had often seen straining their utmost under a heavy load of wood or hay, especially when the wheels were stuck in the mud or in a rut, and the peasants would beat them so cruelly, sometimes even about the nose and eyes. He felt so sorry for them that he almost cried. And his mother always used to take him away from the window. All of a sudden, there was a great uproar of shouting, singing, and the balalaika. And from the tavern, a number of big and very drunken peasants came out, wearing, wearing red and blue shirts and coats thrown over their shoulders. "Get in, get in!" shouted one of them, a young, thick-necked peasant with a fleshy face, red as a carrot. "I'll take all you in. I'll take you all. Get in." But at once there was an outbreak of laughter and exclamations in the crowd. Take us all with a beast like that. Why, my Kolka? Are you crazy to put a nag like that in such a car? And this mare is 20 if she is a day, mates. Get in, I'll take you all, Kolka shouted again, leaping first into the car, seizing the reins and standing straight up in front. The pay has gone with Matway, he shouted from the car. And this brood, mates, is just breaking my heart. I feel as if I could kill her. She's just eating her head off. Get in, I tell you. I'll make her gallop. She'll gallop. And he picked up the whip, preparing himself with relish to flog the little mare. Get in, come along. The crowd laughed. You hear? She'll gallop. Gallop indeed. She has not had a gallop in her for the last 10 years. She'll jog along. You mind her? Don't you mind her, mates? Bring a whip, each of you get ready. All right, give it to her. They all clambered into cart, my Kolka's cart, laughing and making jokes. 6 men got in, and there was still room for more. They hauled in a fat, rosy-cheeked woman. woman. She was dressed in red cotton in a pointed, beaded headdress and thick leather shoes. She was cracking nuts and laughing. The crowd round them was laughing too, indeed. How could they help laughing? Their next nag was to drag all the cart low of them at a gallop. Two young fellows in the cart were just getting whips, ready to help my Kolka. With the cry of now, the mare tugged with her all might, but far from galloping, could scarcely move forward. She struggled with her legs. Okay, wait 20 seconds here. Look there. I think that they are referring to the horse while they are using gallops, but I'll see as we proceed. She struggled with her legs, gasping and shrinking from the blows of the three whips which were showered upon her like hail. The laughter in the cart and in the crowd was readable, but Michaelga flew into a rage and furiously thrashed the mare, as though he supposed she could really gallop. What the fuck this gallop means, I have to search. Gallop. Used about a horse or a rider to go at the fastest speed. Okay, I was right. Let me get in. Two mates, shouted a young man in the crowd, whose appetite was aroused. Get in, I'll get in, cried Makolka. She'll draw you all. I'll beat her to death. And he thrashed and thrashed at the mare beside himself with fury. Father, father, he cried. Father, what are they doing? Father, they are beating the poor horse. Come along, said his father. They are drunken and foolish. They are in fun. Come away, don't look. And he tried to draw him away. But he tore himself away from his hand, and beside himself with horror, ran to the horse. The poor beast was in a bad way. She was gasping, standing still and then tugging again and almost falling. Beat her to death, cried my Kolka. It's come to death. It's come to that. I'll do for her. What are you about? Are you a Christian, you devil? Shouted an old man in the crowd. Did anyone ever see the like? A wretched nag like that pulling such a cartload, said another. You'll kill her, shouted the third. Don't meddle, it's my property. I'll do what I choose. Get in, more of you, get in, all of you. I'll have her go at the gallop. All at once left broke into a roar and covered everything. The mare, roused by the shower of blows, began feebly kicking. Even the old man could not help smiling. To think of a wretched little beast like that trying to kick. Two lads in the crowd snatched the whips and ran to the mare to beat her about the ribs. One ran each side, hit her in the face, in the eyes, cried Makolka. Give us a song, mate, shouted someone in the car, and everyone in the car joined in a ridiculous song, jingling a tambourine and whistling. The woman went on cracking nuts and laughing. He ran beside the mare, ran in front of her, saw her being whipped across the eyes, right in the eyes. He was crying. He felt choking. His tears were streaming. One of the men gave him a cut with the whip across the face. He did not feel it. Wringing his hands and screaming, he rushed up to the gray-headed old man with the gray beard, who was shaking his head in disapproval. One woman seized him by the hand and would have taken him away, but he tore himself from her and ran back to the mare. She was almost at the last gasp, but began kicking once more. I'll teach you how to kick, Mikolka shouted fiercely. He threw down the whip, bent forward, and picked up from the bottom of a cart a long, thick shaft. He took hold of one end with both hands. With an effort, brandished it over the mare. He'll crush her, was shouted round him. He'll kill her. It's my property, shouted McCullough, and brought the shaft down with a swinging blow. There was a sound of a heavy thud. Thrasher! Thrasher! Why have you stopped? Shouted a voice in the crowd, and Mikolka swung the shaft, a second time, and it fell a second time on the spine of luckless mare. I think mare is the horse. Mare mare. She back on her haunches, but lurched forward and tuggled forward with all her force. Tugged first on one side and then on the other, trying to move the cart, but the six whips were attacking her in all directions, and the shaft was raised again and fell upon her a third time, then a fourth, with heavy measured blows. Mikolka was in a fury that he could not kill her at one blow. She's a tough one, was shouting in the crowd. She'll fall in a minute, mates. There will soon be an end of her, said an admiring spectator in the crowd. Fetch an axe to her. Finish her off, shouted a third. I'll show you. Stand up. Mikolka screamed frantically. He threw down the shaft, stooped down in the cart, and picked up an iron crowbar. Look out, he shouted, and with all his might, he dealt a stunning blow at the poor mare. The blow fell. The mare staggered, sank back, tried to pull, but the bar fell again with a swinging blow on her back, and she fell on the ground like a log. Finish her off, shouted my Mikolka, and he leapt beside himself out of the car. Several young men, also flushed with drinks, seized anything they could come across, whips, sticks, poles, and ran to the dying mare. Mikolka stood on one side and began dealing random blows with crowbar. The mare stretched out her head, drew a long breath, and died. You butchered her, someone shouted in the crowd. Why wouldn't she gallop then? My property, shouted Mikolka, with bloodshot eyes, brandishing the bar in his hands. He stood as though regretting that he had nothing more to beat. No mistake about it, you are not a Christian. Many voices were shouting in the crowd, but the poor boy beside himself made his way screaming through the crowd to the sorrel neck, put his arms round her bleeding dead head, and kissed it. Kissed the eyes, kissed the lips. Then he jumped up and flew in a frenzy with his little fists out at my collar. At that instant, his father, who had been running after him, snatched him up and carried him out of the crowd. Come along, come. Let us go home, he said. Father, why did they kill the poor horse? He sobbed. But his voice broke and the words came in shrieks from his paining chest. They are drunk, they are brutal. It's not our business, said his father. He put his arms around his father and he felt choked. He tried to draw a breath, to cry out and woke up. He waked up, gasping for breath, his hair soaked with perspiration, and stood up in terror. Thank God that was only a dream, he said, sitting down under a tree and drawing deep breaths. But what is it? Is it some fever coming on? Did you hide a scream? He felt utterly broken. Darkness and confusion were in his soul. He rested his elbows on his knees and leaned his head on his hands. Like this. Good God, he cried. Can it be? Can it be that I shall really take an axe, that I shall strike her on the head, split her skull open, that I shall tread in the sticky warm blood, break the lock, steal the tremble, hide, all spattered in the blood with an axe? Good God, can it be? He was shaking like a leaf as he said this. But why am I going on like this? He continued, sitting up again, as it were in profound amazement. I knew that I could never bring myself to it. So what have I been torturing myself for till now? Yesterday, yesterday when I went to make that experiment, yesterday I realized completely that I could never bear to do it. Why am I going over it again then? Why am I hesitating? As I came down the stairs yesterday, I said myself that it was base, loathsome, vile. The very thought of it made me feel sick and filled me with horror. No, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Granted, granted that there is no flaw in all that reasoning, that all that I have concluded this last month is clear as day, true as arithmetic. My God! Anyway, I couldn't bring myself to it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Why? Why then I'm still. He rose to his feet, looked around in wonder, as though surprised at finding himself in this place, and went towards the bridge. He was pale, his eyes glowed. He was exhausted in every limb, but he seemed suddenly to breathe more easily. He felt he had cast off that fearful burden that had so long been weighing upon him. And all at once there was a sense of relief and peace in his soul. Lord, pray, show me my path. I renounce that accused, cursed dream of mine. Crossing the bridge, he gazed quietly and calmly at the neighbor, at the glowing red sun setting in the glowing sky. In spite of his weakness, he was not conscious of fatigue. It was as though an abscess that had been forming for a month past in his heart had suddenly broken. Freedom. Freedom. He was free from that spell, that sorcery, that obsession. Later on, when he recalled the time and all that happened to him during those days, minute by minute, point by point, he was superstitiously impressed by one circumstance, which, though itself not very exceptional, always seemed to him afterwards the predestined turning point of his fate. He could never understand or explain to himself why, when he was tired and worn out, when it would have been more convenient for him to go home by the shortest and most direct way, he had returned by Haymarket, where he had no need to go. It was obviously and quite unnecessarily out of his way. Though, not so, it is true that it happened to him dozens of times to return home without noticing what streets he passed through. But why? He was always asking himself, why had such an important, such a decisive, and at the same time such an absolutely chance meeting happen in the Haymarket, where he had moreover no reason to go, at the very hour, the very mirror of his life, when he was just in the very mood and in the very circumstances in which that meeting was able to exert the greatest and most decisive influence on his whole destiny, as though it had been lying in wait for him on purpose. It was about 9 o'clock when he crossed the Haymarket. At the tables and the barrels, at the booths and the shops, all the market people were closing their establishments or clearing away and packing up their wares, and like the customers were going home, rat pickers and cosmet- costermongers of all kinds were crowding round the tables in the dirty and stinking courtyards of the Haymarket. Raskolnikov particularly liked this place and neighboring allies when he wandered aimlessly in the streets. Okay, खाली streets भाई. Mhm. Here, his rags did not attract contemptuous attention, and one could walk about in any attire without scandalizing people. At the corner of an alley, a huckster and his wife had two tables set out with tapes, thread, cotton, and handkerchiefs, etc., etc. They too had got up to go home, but were lingering in conversation with a friend who had just come up to them. This friend was Lizaveta Ivanova. अरे ये क्या चल रहा है? Israel's at the corner of an alley, a huckster and his wife had two tables set out with tapes. हाँ समझ गया. दो बंदे बात कर रहे थे. एक लड़का था, एक लड़की थी. इनका कुछ स्टॉल होगा. हाँ, उनका कोई दोस्त से बात कर रहे थे. As everyone called her Lizaveta, the younger sister of the old pawnbroker, Loina Ivanova was Raskolnikov visited the previous day to pawn his brooch and make his experiment. He already knew all about Lizaveta and she knew him a little too. But no, 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 no. She was a single woman of about 35, tall, clumsy, timid, submissive, and almost idiotic. She was a complete slave and went in fear of and trembling of her sister, who made her work day and night, and even beat her. She was standing with a bundle up before the huckster and his wife, listening earnestly and doubtfully. They were talking of something with special warmth. The moment Raskolnikov caught sight of her, he was overcome by a strange sensation as it were of intense astonishment. Though there was nothing astonishing about this meeting. You could make up your mind for yourself, Elizaveta Ivanova. The huckster was saying aloud. Come round tomorrow, about 7. They will be here too. Tomorrow? Said Elizaveta slowly and thoughtfully, as though unable to make up her mind. Upon my word, what a fright you are in our Leona Ivanova, cavilled the huckster's wife, a lively little woman. I look at you, you are like some little babe, and she's not your own sister either. Nothing but a step-sister, and what a hand she keeps over you. But this time, don't say a word to it, Aliona Ivanova. Her husband interrupted. That's my advice. But come round to us without asking. It will be worth your while. Why? Later, when your sister herself may have a notion. Am I to come about 7 o'clock tomorrow, and they will be here? You will be able to decide for yourself, and we'll have a cup of tea, added his wife. All right, I'll come, said Elizaveta, still pondering, and she began slowly moving away. The Silco had just passed and heard no. He passed softly unnoticed, trying not to miss a word. His first amazement was followed by a thrill of horror, like a shiver running down his spine. He had learned, he had suddenly, quite unexpectedly learned that the next day at 7 o'clock, Lizaveta, the old woman's sister and only companion, would be away from the home, and that, therefore, at 7 o'clock, precisely the old woman would be left alone. He was only a few steps from his lodging. He went in it like a man condemned to death. He thought of nothing and was incapable of thinking. But he felt suddenly in his whole being that he had no more freedom of thought, no will, and that everyone was suddenly irrevocably decided. Suddenly, if he had to wait whole years of a suitable opportunity, he could not recount on a more certain step towards the success of his plan. That that which had just presented itself. In any case, it would have been difficult to find out beforehand, and with certainty, with greater exactness and less risk. And without dangerous inquiries and investigators, that next day, at a certain time, an old woman from whose life and attempt was contemplated would be at home and entirely alone. Okay, finish the fuck up. Chapter 5 finished. Okay, bye.